Hi, this is Amy Lewis.
Maybe more makeup.
This is Engineers Unplugged. Welcome back to an amazing episode of Engineers Unplugged. In fact, it might be our last one if I know these two guests. We're going to be talking about GoatOps. We've got Joe Onisick and Michael Ducy. What on earth is GoatOps? Take it away, Joe.
All right, so Mike, I look at the entire idea of DevOps as this interesting thing, and from an enterprise IT vendor, we usually take this concept and try and package it and go sell it as a solution, and we get it way wrong, especially up front when it's being done. So for my life, I've been talking about this storage and this networking and this server or compute silo, and we're always trying to blend these silos together. I look at DevOps as kind of, this is the silo, and the devs or application owners up top, this is where we need to be able to be breaching the gap and the rest. How do you explain DevOps? What do you think of DevOps?
Yeah, so typically it is just this merging of operations and development, which is in some ways correct and in some ways horribly wrong, right? So the idea is that if you actually look at what you have here, is if you look at it from a DevOps world perspective, what this actually is a manufacturing chain, right? So if we start to think about IT as a manufacturing chain and that we're actually producing a good, and development is actually part of this manufacturing chain. So you have the business over here, and they're feeding their requirements into this entire process. And the devs actually should move over here into this process, and basically what you end up doing is building this chain to where it goes from storage, network, compute, application security, and you're looking at things holistically from the entire life cycle, and then feeding that off into the customer, which could be the business again, if I remember how to spell. And then basically you're basically optimizing this whole flow of work through the system. And so if you think of it very basically, it's increasing the flow of work through the system, however you want to look at it from a DevOps perspective, right?
Gotcha, so what we're looking at doing is taking the business requirements for what the customers desire and turning IT into the service chain that delivers that as efficiently as possible.
Right, and the problem is when you start to think of things like DevOps as a service, right? Or DevOps as a service in a box, it's almost practically impossible to encapsulate all of these things in one workflow or one chain, right? And so the idea is that there's a lot of culture and customs and ways of doing things that you have to begin to wrap around things holistically to actually optimize this flow of work through the system, if that makes sense.
It does. So you said culture and customs, which relates back to me to practices, policies, and organizations. That doesn't seem like an easy thing to change. That's not a product I can just go buy to go do DevOps.
Right, and that's why this whole DevOps as a service idea is a fool's errand or folly, or as I called it recently, snake oil.
Or GoatOps.
Right? Or GoatOps. Well, it's not necessarily GoatOps. GoatOps is actually something totally different, right? So the idea is that when you actually are trying to optimize the supply chain, the people that are in the best position to actually do this are these individuals that are multi-talented, multifaceted, right? So they know a little bit about each one of these pieces, right? So we typically have called those people, an inch deep and a mile wide, right? But if you look at those people and you look at an actual goat, so goats are very intelligent. Goats can be used for multiple things. You can milk them, you can kill them for their meat.
They can climb trees.
Use their fur. They can climb trees. You just learned that for preparation for this, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's the same individuals that you need to actually optimize this supply chain, or this workflow chain, and actually optimize delivery to your customer, right? Are these individuals that I call goats.
Makes sense. So then another question. If I'm getting there are probably some products that can help along this way and things that we can do, but if you were to take 3 big picture steps, what's the first thing I want to do if I want to start moving into this idea of DevOps as an enterprise?
So the first thing you want to do is you want to make this, so basically there's little components that you begin to optimize, right? And we've optimized this already by what we call cloud, right?
Right.
And so John Willis, who is one of the godfathers of DevOps, talks about local optimization all the time, right? And so we've optimized locally. So we've optimized this one small piece of the flow, and so now we actually have to start working into the development and application delivery side of things and the security side of things, right? So we started with cloud, we've got cloud, great.
If I can spell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you actually talk about app release, and then you might have security delivery at the end. And so now basically you have all of these chains that you need to optimize. What's interesting is there's actually already been a lot of work done in this space, and your developers are probably already way ahead of you of actually optimizing the flow of work through their system.
Right.
But they've done it locally, and that's the problem, right? Is that they've worked locally, and now enterprise IT shops have worked locally as well, and they haven't connected the two together. So things don't flow, things hit this wall still when they're trying to get handed off from one to the other. And mainly because these guys aren't feeding back in requirements to operations, and operations has no idea how these guys actually work and how they want to work.
So step 2 is ops, feedback loop to dev.
Yes, yep. And I would say step 3 is working towards a model of what's called CI or CD, right? So basically continuous integration and continuous delivery, which falls underneath the application release side of the house.
Gotcha. So I want to start with a model that delivers my infrastructure dynamically, and then I want to move to getting my ops teams and developers teams working together and continue a continuous feedback loop, people to people.
Right.
And then I want to go to a point where I can now release faster and integrate faster from dev, test, prod, lifecycle.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
And then the fourth piece of this, I would say, would be monitoring, right? Because if you don't measure it, you don't actually know if you're improving. And so that's not only monitoring the actual application and is it performing the way I want, and also the business metrics as well, but it's also monitoring as like, is this process actually faster than the way it used to be?
Perfect. Amy, I don't think we can say anything else more interesting than that. Why don't you close us out?
I'm going to leave that one without comment. That was actually really interesting. That will be my comment. So thank you for that. And normally we have Unicorn Challenge, but I feel like you've proved the utility of goats. So frankly, I want to see you both draw goats. It's the Goat Challenge. Go.
Let's go.
Go. Game on. Goat on.
Jump around now. Jump around now. Jump around now.
That's actually a pretty good goat there.
I've been beaten.
Wow, but you got a tree. Nice job.
Thank you.
So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And we'll see you next time, assuming we're still on the air, at Engineers Unplugged.